spiritual food for thought.
Welcome back to Spiritual Food for Thought. Thank you for joining me once again. In this one, I'm going to take something that I shared with my family, share that, and then share the realization that I had as I was sharing this with my family. So basically, what I was sharing with my family was 3 foundational Psalms. And if you back up in my life and the life of my wife and our walk with the Lord, started, almost 20 years ago now, these 3 Psalms early on began to make a deep impact with us that's only grown over time. But as I have my children now, who are ages from newborn to about 16 and a half or so, they may not all realize this, but they can see from the life that we live the impact that these Psalms have had on our life as we live it out. But what I wanted to do for them was to share this so they could understand how this foundation works in our life and our walk. And then what I realized is heading through is that there is blessings that our Heavenly Father is trying to give us. And there are those who would rob you of your blessings or convince you not to be blessed. And it's very interesting when you compare these 3 Psalms, what's brought out in them, and then think about the blessing that you're supposed to receive if you believe this and walk in it, versus what people will tell you these days. So the first foundational Psalm for us is Psalm 1. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. You can see it starts off with, blessed is the man. Hold that thought. The next Psalm, and there's a lot of good Psalms in the Bible. I can't say that any are bad, right? But these are just ones that had major impact in us. So this, if I had to list my top 3, okay, these would be my top 3. And then I could tell you that my top 4, my fourth one would be Psalm 119. But here, Psalm 127 says, except the Lord buildeth the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain. It is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he giveth his beloved sleep. Lo, children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. Happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gate. Okay, and that happy there, that could also be translated as blessed in verse 5. And the next one, Psalm 128, is the next one. Blessed is everyone that feareth the Lord, that walketh in his ways. For thou shalt eat the labor of thine hands. Happy shalt thou be, and it shall be well with thee. Thy wife shall be as a fruitful vine by the sides of thy house, thy children like olive plants round about thy table. Behold, that thus shall the man be blessed that feareth the Lord. The Lord shall bless thee out of Zion, and thou shalt see the good of Jerusalem all the days of thy life. Yea, thou shalt see thy children's children, and peace upon Israel. So those are foundational Psalms for our life. If you look at the way that we live and we walk it out, you'd be able to see that. And our children who've grown up in that are able to have that resonate with them as we point to those Psalms. But here's the part I want to focus on. There's 2 main paths to blessing. Or there's a blessing expressed that is expressed in 2 different ways. Okay? You can be blessed this way, or both. And it's unfortunate that modern culture and modern church culture generally rejects these 2. Psalm 1, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. See, the law of God has become the enemy of the modern church. And they teach that it's their enemy and that it had to be done away with. And that Jesus came to nail the law to the cross to set us free from the law of God. But obeying God's law brings a blessing, and his commandments are not arbitrary. God doesn't say, here's the blessings and here's the curses, and put like debt with the curses. That's not arbitrary. There's blessing that comes along with not choosing a curse. Okay, my life has been incredibly blessed because we sold our house in Wisconsin to get out of debt because it was the only debt that we had, and then chose not to go into debt again, which meant we paid land for our property, and we paid cash for our land, our property, and we paid cash for our house. That's incredible, not to have to pay a mortgage. But God says that that's a curse. So it's a debt, it's a curse we're not going to choose. Even though a lot of people choose it for their groceries with the credit card, they choose it for their phones, they choose it for their cars, they choose it for their educations, they choose it for their houses, they choose it for their properties. You don't have to choose debt. You can let God be the God who provides, or Hagar is always an option. That's the way I generally express it. That you can either let God be God, and you can take him at face value and allow him to operate as he says he can, or you can choose Hagar. You can go with plan B. You can achieve it in the flesh and not wait and be quick about it. To save up money to buy a property is a waiting game. To go to the bank, get approved for a loan, and jump into debt is the quick way. I call that Hagar. But here it says that the law of the Lord is his delight, and he meditates in it day and night. There's a blessing that comes with it. I remember when that hit me hard, and I started meditating the law of God day and night. I chose to let myself off easy. I said, I'll just start with the 10 Commandments. I'll just look at, Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy 5, and I'll just do the 10 Commandments. And then I began to realize things like, how come the Sabbath is like a third of the 10 Commandments by volume? How come it gets 4 verses and thou shalt not kill, neither shalt thou steal, get like 4 words, right? I've got a whole playlist now on the Sabbath because of that. But the modern church is going to try to steal your blessing. See, the problem is breaking God's law brings a curse. The problem is not God's law. It's a blessing to delight in his law and to meditate in it day and night. So now we see Psalm 127, right? Happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. Blessed is the man that hath his quiver full of them. What is the blessing? Children. A heritage of the Lord, the fruit of the womb is his reward. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. And it's amazing to listen to church people, right? Oh, you've got 3 children. Your quiver's full. Then you have another one. 4 children now. Wow, you've got a full quiver. Have your 5th. Oh, wow, 5 children. You know that a quiver held 5 arrows. Honestly, if my quiver held 5 arrows, I would not bother going to war. What, travel for 2 weeks to go to where the enemy is? Take a minute to shoot my 5 arrows and then what, travel home for another 2 weeks? That doesn't make any sense, okay? And I have a video about a body mutilation epidemic in the modern church. I want you to think about that. My wife actually just had her 10th. Why? Because children are a reward. The fruit of the womb is his reward. Blessed, happy is the man that has his quiver full of them. Okay? Except the Lord build the house. House could be household there. It could be tribe. How do you build a household? How do you build a family? You add people to it. Now, there's people who allow God to author life in their marriage if he sees fit and don't have any children. Okay? That was God's choice. They gave him the opportunity. He chose not to bless them with children. There are those who do and have a couple. We turn that area of our life over to him early on in our marriage. And so far, he's still choosing to bless us with children. But they're a heritage of the Lord. They're a reward. There's a blessing in them, and it's our way of letting him build our house. Say, not my will be done, but thy will be done. And people go, wow, how many children do you want? Well, I want as many as he gives me. I didn't want 10 children. My wife just had her 10th. I wanted God's will to be done. Okay? That's what he chose. So we allowed him to be the Lord of our bedroom, just like we do allow him to be the Lord of our kitchen or the Lord of our dining room or the Lord of our living room. Okay? As for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. That means family too. We're going to serve him with all that's ours, including our house and the rooms thereof. But this blessing, a lot of people, boy, even in the modern church, boy, you show up with 4 or 5 children, they have a hard time. Why? Well, a lot of them have paid to mutilate their own reproductive organs, to remove the headship of their Heavenly Father, of the author of life, from authoring life in their marriage. It is what it is. But I would rather choose the blessing that God is giving in that. And then look at 128. It ties them both together. Blessed is everyone that feareth the Lord, that walketh in his ways. To walk in the way of the Lord, his commandments. His commandments are not arbitrary. Okay? He says these things for a reason, and we take him at face value. That's why we choose to be whole Bible believers. Okay? If he commands it, and if it applies, then we're willing to apply it to our lives. Okay? There's commandments for priests, Levitical priests. I'm not a Levitical priest. There's commandments for women. I'm not a woman. I grow fruit trees, so I count my fruit trees, as it says in Leviticus 19. I count them uncircumcised for the first 3 years. Then I consider them to be holy unto the Lord the 4th, and on the 5th year we partake of the fruit thereof. Okay? He commands that. It applies to me. So therefore we obey it. And there's a blessing to it, because blessed is everyone that feareth the Lord and walketh in his ways. Oh, isn't that what Ecclesiastes 12:13 says? Let us hear the conclusion of the matter. To fear God and keep his commandments is the whole duty of man. Makes sense to me. And then he says too, thy wife shall be as a fruitful vine by the sides of thy house, thy children like olive plants round about thy table. We were considering, because we got a lot of vines. In fact, we were just eating some passion fruit. A passion fruit vine does not just grow a passion fruit. Okay? A watermelon vine does not just grow a watermelon. A vine bears fruit, and fruit is a plural thing most of the time. God could choose to only give you one child. But most of the time, people cut him off from blessing them with children long before he would be done blessing them with children. That's the most common thing that generally happens. But behold, that thus shall the man be blessed that feareth the Lord. How shall he be blessed? Well, his wife will be a fruitful vine. The fruit of the womb is his reward. You therefore have children like olive plants round about thy table. So I want you to consider those. Those are 3 Psalms that have meant a lot to us over the years. We continue to grow into that. And even now, versus like 15 years ago, we obey a lot more of what's contained in the entirety of Scripture, right? We don't divorce what we find here in the New Testament from what we read here, because the law and the prophets is the foundation upon which it is laid. And as long as heaven and earth remain, not one jot or tittle is going to pass away. I can see heaven and earth right now. They still remain. And then as well, we have that blessing of just walking in his ways, because his word is true from the beginning. But we also have that blessing of children. Like I said, 10. I was talking to a guy in the checkout line, and he mentioned something. Oh, I had a bunch of bananas. He goes, wow, you guys must really like bananas. I said, my wife just gave birth to our 10th. So if we each want 2 bananas, we're going to need about 20 to 2 dozen bananas to each have 2. I said, but most people don't make it past double digits. And he goes, most people don't make it past 3, children. But I think they could. The deal is that far too often, people say, I do not want you to build my house. And whatever struggle, whatever financial burden, whatever strain that they're trying to avoid in restricting the author of life from authoring life, they can labor in vain in building their house that way. Meaning that one child that they chose to have, or they were trying for a boy and a girl and they got 2 boys, so they stopped then. Well, those 2 boys could bring them all the heartache and hardship that they were trying to avoid by not allowing God to author life, so they didn't wind up with 6 or something. Just want to throw that out there. I think It says in 1 Corinthians, right? You are not your own. If you're a believer, you're no longer a slave to sin, but you should be a slave to righteousness. When God freed them from the bondage of Israel, it was to be his servants. The same word. In the New Testament, it's doulos. It means slave. People like to call it servant, but it means slave. If he made me and then he bought me, then I should be here for his purposes for as long as I live. And if we're going to serve him and we're going to agree with him, then we have to agree that his ways are right, that his word is true from the beginning, that the things that he says are forever throughout all your generations, whether you're a native born or a stranger, that we're not done with the generations. Okay? We're not done with forever yet. His everlasting perpetual covenants are not over. And as it says in Ephesians 2, now we can be joined to the commonwealth of Israel and therefore partakers of the covenants of promise. Because if you go to Jeremiah 31, who was the covenant made with? Israel. And we can be grafted in to spiritual Israel and therefore partakers of the covenants of promise. And therefore the things that God commands for his people, just like it was true for Ruth, just like it was true for Rahab, just like the mixed multitude that came out of Egypt with, Moses and the Israelites at that point, the law applied to them. Check Exodus 12:49. One law for the native born and the stranger who dwells with them. New Testament says there's not Jew nor Greek. God's laws are for his people. It's a blessing to walk in his ways. And children are a blessing too. Now you can choose to disagree with God. You can think children are a curse, and then you can raise up your children to be a curse. I'd rather believe they're blessings and treat them and raise them as such. Leave your comments below. I appreciate anyone who made it this far. Be blessed.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.